So I saw this article on Facebook, and it appears that once again someone is trying to destroy some of the best sites in British history that are most important to the nation's history. Now, the Battle of Bosworth, of course, I need not remind you, was an incredibly important battle. Thousands of men fought against each other, and many of these men were killed. It also saw the death of Richard III, the last of the Plantagenet line of kings who had ruled England for hundreds of years. So this was a monumental shift. Of course, the battlefield where this was fought is therefore incredibly important to English, British, and world history today by tracing this back. However, it's now come under threat, despite the importance of this site and the importance of maintaining such sites so that our young people can go there and can experience history. It really is a very good site. I visited it myself when I was a bairn, and it really is great for people to come there and to witness the history that's there without being interrupted by a test driving track for self-driving cars, which has been planned to be built right on top of the site. Now yes, it is a little bit away from the battlefield itself, but it's literally on top of the hill where one of the armies stood before the battlefield. And of course, if you are there, you can no longer enjoy the battlefield without the sound of these self-driving cars buzzing around in the background. Needless to say, I think this is a terrible idea, just as with the plan to extend the motorway right next to Stonehenge, which, like Bosworth Battlefield, is an incredibly important site for British history, and possibly more so than Bosworth, brings in many tourists from abroad who know Stonehenge as an important place in British history. As well as this, the battlefield of Bosworth, as I said, has a visitor centre and does good work there to spread information about history and does draw in tourists from both abroad and from the surrounding areas in the country. Now, with this test driving track, I think the appeal of visiting the battlefield when hearing all of these cars in the background and literally having a huge complex, steel complex right next to the battlefield will take a lot away from what was, and I hope will remain, a rural setting that can really help you to imagine what the battlefield would have been like back in the day, with famous sites like Ambion Hill, and where the King Richard III was cut down. Now, of course, this battle did see the end of the Plantagenet line of kings, and it's very important to today's history as well, as I've explained in featured history about the Tudors and about the Battle of Bosworth, because of course it's after the death of Richard III that Henry VII came to the throne, and Henry VII was obviously the father of the Tudor dynasty, who would go on to rule England until into the 17th century. And even after the death of Queen Elizabeth, who was famous for not having an heir and for really kickstarting many of the great institutions that we think of as British and English as a whole. Also, the start of the Union really begins with the Tudors. Wales is properly incorporated because Henry VII was a Welshman, so you could possibly have seen a very different history without this, and obviously Bosworth is the battlefield where it happened. And as well, because Elizabeth died childless, James I of Scotland, who was a great-great-grandson of Henry VII, again without his victory at Bosworth this wouldn't have been possible, came to the throne, and through him you get obviously the Stuarts for a while, then you have a bit of an interlude with some Dutch boys kicking in the House of Oranje-Nassau, and finally as well the Germans, the Hanoverians, and they are all the direct ancestors of our current monarch Elizabeth II and her ruling house, and this all goes back to the victory of Henry VII at the Battle of Bosworth. So you can see that this is an incredibly important moment in our history that really changed things up. Now, if you ask me, please do go and sign the petition that I have in the description below. It's essentially against this move to build this test driving place right on top of this battlefield, because of course there are many places where they could build this, but then they're trying to build it here. I'm not against the self-driving car test place, you know what, it might be a good thing, but just not on top of one of the most important battles in British history, please. That would be great. Also, I would recommend, instead of these self-driving cars, just get a bike. Honestly, everyone drives bikes. And also, if you need new places to build stuff and you've run out, why not build some boulders? There are plenty of places. So my suggestion here down by Wales, in between the north of Devon there, so the southwest boulder. Why not in London? I mean, no one really likes the coast around there. The Dempster boulder. Or in the north, the floating flat cap. I think this would be a great idea, and I recommend you do it. Because in all honesty, who's going to miss the coastlines around here? You could extend this, get some nice marshlands, you get some lovely wading birds there, be great for the environment, and you have a bit more space. I mean, that's what we did anyway.